Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to RISE Summit 2022, hosted by RISE Infinity Foundation and IWPRO Solutions. This is the 9th version. About 3,000 people from 51 countries are part of this. 100 hours of programming goes into this. RISE stands for the values responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and eco-friendly. So today, in the conclave, we discuss peace and conflict resolution. This is so relevant more than ever. Can we have the slide on SDGs, please? So these are the Sustainable Development Goals. So you can see here the 16th one, that is peace and justice. That is Sustainable Development Goals. Now, in the year 2014, the United Nations had formulated these 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be attained before 2030 to transform the world. Now, why did UN do it? In the year 2014, you can take it off. Yes, thank you so much. You can, the slide can go, yes. So in the year 2014, it was that the UN conducted a sort of a research and came out with a study that around 19.5 million people globally had to flee their homes due to war, violence, persecution, or natural disaster. And half of them are children. This is so alarming. So in 2015, the UN had included peace and justice as part of this Sustainable Development Goal. But now in 2020, just 8 years, 2022, just 8 years towards this, UN has declared over 70 million people are displaced for the same reasons: violence, conflicts, wars, natural disaster, persecution, all those things. And half of them are children. So where are we? Have we headed anywhere? So the discussion today becomes both urgent and important. That is why we are discussing it here. So we have very distinguished subject experts here, and I'm happy to introduce them to you. Rebecca Kroll, as you can see, is the Area Focus Manager, Peace Building and Conflict Prevention. She has worked for over a decade on the strategic and programmatic development of Rotary's peace building portfolio. Worked with transitional communities in Latin America, Europe, and the United States with a focus on connecting people, ideas, and resources to drive projects forward. She's worked on developing underlying structures and institutions that promote peace, worked on providing economic connectivity in divided communities and transitional areas. She has collaborated with Rotarians and Rotary Peace Fellows on various initiatives. She has actively contributed to the conceptualization and expansion of Rotary's work in positive peace with the partners at the Institute for Economics and Peace, outbound peace building, and partners global. She works with Rotarians to increase their impact through improving the design, monitoring, and evolution of their peace building programs. Warm welcome, Ms. Rebecca Kroll.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you. The next subject, distinguished subject expert is, we have here with us Praveen Dixit, retired Director General of Police, Maharashtra State, India. Forgive me, I have a small issue with my tongue today. So I bit my tongue. So that is why there could be some pronunciation glitches, technical glitches. So Praveen Dixit, retired Director General of Police, Maharashtra Police State, India. He is a recipient of Katin Seva Medal. Katin Seva is a difficult service, tough service. President's Medal for Meritorious Services. President's Medal for Distinguished Service. Very wonderful to have you here, sir. As Director General of Police, Maharashtra State, India, he has adopted innovative technologies and ensured good governance and provided transparent administration. He introduced radio monitoring to change the pattern of patrolling. He installed CCTV cameras in metropolitan cities as well as big towns. He strengthened human technological intelligence to prevent terrorist attacks. He launched Police Mitra. Mitra means friend. Maharashtra app. Police Mitra, that is Police Friend Maharashtra app, available on App Gallery on Android phones today. This app provides all police helplines, women police helpline, child helpline, senior citizens helpline, e-complaint about vehicle theft and mobile theft. So this empowered the citizens. He enrolled citizens cutting across gender, languages, religions, age, to do voluntary 2 to 3 hours service every day, to do core policing in nearby police stations, donning armbands and special t-shirts and sporting I-cards proudly given by the police department. It is something monumental, making citizens volunteer to do 2 to 3 hours of work every day. Salute you. Trained them to do patrolling, blockade, security duties in temples and traffic duties. Today, there are 5 lakh police mitra there in India. As DG Anti-Corruption Bureau, he had implemented Helpline 1064 and ACB Maharashtra.net app, which enable people to share video as well as audios of bribery and extortion and misuse of power. As Principal Secretary of Home Department, he maintained law and order, coordinated the efforts towards national security of Government of India and the state governments. He strengthened coastal security in view of the past terrorist incidents from seashore. As Commissioner of Police, Nagpur, he digitized city police, reduced risk to national security by bringing juvenile delinquents to mainstream. And he also, as Vice Chairman of Maharashtra Administrative Tribunal, which he joined after retirement till July 2021, he was there. He provided micro justice to service personnel and reduced their grievances. Let's extend a warm welcome to DGP Praveen Dikshit.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now we have here Mandar Apte, a very a person who has been just introduced to us, and I am just astounded by his achievement. He is a former Shell executive who has managed Shell game changer investments in social interventions that create both social impact and business value. At Shell, Mandar also won the Ashoka and Accenture sponsored League of Intrapreneurs Award for designing and teaching program to improve the innovation culture at Shell. Intrapreneurs, okay, inside Shell, wonderful. Mandar was also a scholar at George Mason School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution, where he ran an innovation hub on the business of peace. Wow. Mandar has presented masterclass at several sustainability summits and MBA programs worldwide on social innovation, intrapreneurship, and leadership development. Currently, he manages a strategic consultancy, Cities for Peace, that provides consulting to civic leaders to design situations to promote peace and social harmony. His flagship work in LA is here that focused on enhancing community police relations. Wonderful. Mandar is also the producer director of From India with Love. That is the name of a documentary film, From India with Love, that showcases the transformational experience of victims of war. Thank you so much, Mandar. Welcome to you. A warm welcome to you. Is he online? Yeah.
Thank you, Girija. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. The next subject expert here is with us is Colonel Rohit Dev. He is the Chief Operating Officer, Punjab Renewable Energy Systems Private Limited. Adjunct Professor at Rashtriya Raksha University. Rashtriya Raksha means national security. So Rashtriya Raksha University, providing education on professional security, strategic and defense education, research and training through its qualified civilian and military faculty. He is part of many think tank and committees with few ministries as well. He is a distinguished speaker and ideation lead at many national and international events concerned with bioenergy, biomass supply chain management, climate change and energy transition, leadership of the corporate sector, etc. He is a prolific writer, an orator, and avid television debater in Indian and foreign media. He is as a geopolitical analyst and security expert. He was nicknamed RDX in Army. He served the Indian Army service for 22 years, 11 months. He worked in operations, logistics, and supply chain management, strategy field organization, national security, hospitality, facility management, and instructional assignments. He pioneered many operational logistics and training establishments in the Army. He worked on the United Nations mission Untitled Chapter 7 at Sierra Leone. He made exceptional contributions in managing flood relief of areas in Kashmir in 2014. He mobilized routine logistics for more than 30,000 troops of Indian Army and Border Security Forces, and most importantly, with heavy resource crunch. He completed 100%, first time in the history of Northern Command, winter stocking for ice-capped terrain. He received awards for professional acumen in an Army command level exercise. He authored a white paper on futuristic infantry combat vehicle for a project taken up by the government under Make in India program. He shaped the growth of Punjab Renewable Energy Private Limited by more than 10 times in the last 3 years. He instituted innovative supply chain solutions. He developed police advocacy with governments, agencies, and foreign stakeholders, and multiple functions with PREPS, SPL as well. Delighted to have you here, Colonel.
Thank you. Join everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. So let's have nice ideation and insight gaining. Yeah.
Yes.
I believe in 3 words: ideation, insights, and inspiration. So I will gain insights from Rebecca today.
Yes, we have the next inspiring, daring darling to venture who has ventured where angels fear to tread. Tamanna Dahiya. She works with Women Wage Peace. This organization explores what women can do to stop the cycle of violence. Women are the worst victims who are affected during any war, dispute, or conflict. Yet, they are not included in strategic decisions for peace initiatives. Women Wage Peace is changing that. WWP. Living in Israel for completing her master's degree in conflict resolution and meditation, she has witnessed war, experienced what it is to live in a place being bombed, listening to sirens, seeking cover under tables, not being able to shower or sleep. She has gone through all that at this young age. She has visited bomb shelters and met people and seen varied responses from people living in the same situation, which is very amazing. She has traveled around Israel and Palestine, interviewed people who had lost their family, home, yet engaged with so-called enemies for peace talks. She has interviewed people who had worked in the armed forces and have established peace organizations. She has written extensively about her experiences in the Times of Israel blog. She works with Women Wage Peace, advocating for women's inclusive peace on the Israel-Palestinian conflict. She is here to give us life lessons. Welcome, Labana. Welcome, Tamanna.
Thank you, Rita. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet all.
Thank you. We miss Lubna Panjwani from Karachi, Pakistan, with her expertise on Teach for Peace. She could not participate here as her father-in-law is admitted in the hospital with COVID. So we pray for her and we move on to the discussion now. Welcome, my dear delegates. So here we have, we will start with the session right away. It was important for each of you to know each other. And if I just pasted in the chat, you won't know your background. So the conversation will become more interesting when we know each other's background, isn't it? So I would just request you to ponder on how you would define peace and violence in your own words, a little. And then I would like you to go one by one. So can I invite Rebecca Kroll to talk about her definition of peace and violence in her own words?
Yes, thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me here. It's really wonderful to hear everyone's background and experience. It's very inspiring. So I think that this question can be answered on so many different levels, individual peace to societal and even global peace. But I think that when I think about what peace means to us at a societal level, it really means that all individuals have the right to live free of violence or the fear of violence in their communities. And more importantly, they actually have the opportunity to live up to their full human potential. So
Wonderful.
what is that? And not just some of us, but that all of us have that right, and that we can help each other to achieve that.
Very profound thoughts. Very profound thoughts. Absolutely. Pravinji, would you like to put in your views?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
How can you define peace? Yes.
Yes. First of all, let me once again wish good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to the distinguished panelists. Now, there's a topic which you have asked me to talk on is about the peace and the conflict resolution. Now, before I come to this, I would reminded about the definition of health by the World Health Organization. As WHO has said, health does not mean absence of disease. Similarly, peace does not mean absence of conflict. Peace is a state of mind where you are enjoying peace for yourself and that leads you to the happiness. Similarly, in the societies as well, when a group of persons or a country are in peace, they are happy and pursuing higher goals in life. Violence, as you know, it can be mental, physical, economic, political, or social. So that is in nutshell, I would like to start about the definition part of it. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Yes, when without peace, people cannot progress. If there is violence, absolutely, you said it, everything comes to a standstill. Colonel Rohitdev, would you please like to comment?
Right. So since you asked us to be absolutely impromptu, so I never gave it a thought till now. So let me just now comment. No, I had to be true to your requirements, so I didn't do it actually. So in my understanding, and let me digress a little bit. Peace is a state. It is a state of equilibrium, Lebensraum. It is the peculiar and the most desired, preferable human or humanitarian state in which not only an individual or a society or a region or a country or globally, we are at peace and harmony, not only with people around, but with also what the creation is around, and that is peace. But once you break any cord in this peace, whether you break an interpersonal relationship, whether it's man or woman or it's two men, whether you break a societal relationship of peace by fighting with your neighbor over something, whether it's a regional thing or a inter-state thing, like in any country when you fight for federal rights and it leads to violence on caste, creed, religion. So all these imponderables lead to then a situation which is violence. So it's a state called peace, and any disruption or a disruptor there can lead to a particular situation which is violent. And manifestation of an antigen to peace is violence. So I perceive this state of violence to be more mind-driven, human emotional quotient-driven, and it defies rationality and humanity. So whichever way you look at this, I think it's best put in a bundle that there's a humanitarian so-called superset called peace, in which you can have brokers of these violence happening as very, very minute subsets. But the irony is, when these subsets conjoin, either nationally or globally, and they react and force something against the Lebensraum, the peaceful situation, then they are a threat. And that is where the magnitude rises to a conflict, to a terrorist attack, to something in which there's a forced conflict with another state. So I think we are living in very, very trying times. And when we see peculiarly our human nature, our own heart and mind, that is what causes the shift, the paradigm shift from a state of peace to a state of violence when a thought is invoked in our mind, and manifestation of that can take any shape. So I think it's more to do with how we train our mind, how more educated humanity is actually, and people who impose violence on others and get away at times should also know that the violence can be same time bestowed upon them by some other faction as well. So unless we understand human value, unless we understand that a so-called a weaker sex, I don't consider them weak at all, And if you impose, yourself like that lady is here to talk about it, I think that's also some kind of violence, which is not human in nature, and it needs to be nipped in the bud. And I think education is the factor which will take us ahead. So initial thoughts there for the two definitions. Absolutely impromptu. I never, read about it anyway. So it's mine.
Yeah, absolutely, Colonel, absolutely. Yes, like when you were talking about disturbing the ecosystem, I even thought that when we disturb nature, that is when you are causing all natural disasters. So peace is a state when there is an equilibrium, that balance, as you said so beautifully. Now, Tamanna, can you describe peace? You have experienced violence directly. So a quick description
Yes.
about what is peace to you. It looks so almost elusive and like a utopia, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Girija. And thank you for the other panelists too. I think I reaffirm all the views mentioned above. Peace is definitely not just the absence of violence, because so many times it's things which are happening in this invisible forum. That's what we call structural violence, violence that's restored in like hierarchical, historical identities. And so, for example, if a feminist is to define peace, she would probably say we're at war right now. We have been at war for years because women have still not achieved that kind of equality. So peace and conflict, I think we need to define it in a broader sense, encompassing all kind of identities. And like Rebecca said, creating a kind of environment where every single individual can live with equality, peace, justice, and realize their potential. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the SDG 16, which doesn't talk of peace singularly, but talks of peace and justice. So a very important element, I think, in realizing peace or evaluating environments of conflict is justice. And justice is something that lives in structures, in historical structures. So like the Israel-Palestine conflict, for example, it's not something that has happened just in the month when violence occurred, when military violence occurred. It's something, it's a very volatile structure built on histories of oppression and injustices of two communities. Similarly, for feminists, it's a historical injustice that makes us want to think we're not at peace right now. So I think the positive definition of peace along with justice and equality is what I would look at it with. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Tamanna. Yes, very true. Now, can we have Mandar's opinion here?
I
Just
feel like
opening comments. Yes.
Everybody has captured the essence of how we look at peace through the Indic lens. The way I look at it is, violence happens at three levels. At the level of action, including writing an email and copying 20 other people that don't need to know what you're writing. Violence at the level of speech, words we use. More subtle is violence at the level of the thought. And so the Indian philosophy of peace building, you can say, starts with, unless there is inner peace at the level of the mind, outer peace is just a checkbox. So peace is our nature. We are born with peace. For example, whenever we get angry, do we enjoy it? Do we feel awesome? I got angry today. No, our experience is whenever we have any negative emotion, we take a time out and we say, "Oh, leave me alone. I want to go back. I want to be with myself." That gives you a clue that our innate nature is to be peaceful, and that's why we want to return back to our nature. Exactly. And that's what we do every day in our sleep, right? You cannot sleep if you are not peaceful. So anybody who sleeps has had an experience of peace, no matter where you are.
Absolutely.
So we all know it. That's why we go to work. That's why we go to the movies. That's why we have a garden, right? Because those actions take us back to our nature.
Wonderful. Beautiful.
Just on the lighter side, Mother, even Osama bin Laden slept very peacefully at times.
That's what we think.
But he had a gun by his side as well on the bedside. So that's the difference.
For a Yodha, I think for a Yodha, the work of peace building allows the Yodha to do what he is trained to do, because everything else has been done. There is nothing more to do. So that is how a Yodha is trained, right? The highest wisdom was given on the battlefield. to a Yodha, to a
Absolutely.
deserving Yodha.
I know. So at that point of time, do not think of the consequences. But yes, the consequences remain forever, and they leave such scars that people cannot come out of it for generations, even those who have not witnessed conflict or witnessed violence, right? So yeah, that was a beautiful introduction, my dear subject experts here on the panel. You're also experienced, and all of us are looking forward to a very wonderful, thought-provoking discussion. Um, can, Now, I think we can move on to discuss the causes of conflict. What are the factors? What are those factors that cause human conflict? So, who would like to go first? Can I ask Praveen Dikshit, sir?
Oh, thank
Because
you.
Somebody
Thank
he
you
has
very much
witnessed conflict right on the
to
floor.
start with. Yes, yes. Now, according to my considered opinion, the denial of the problem is the starting of the conflict when simmering situations are not addressed.
Yes.
Secondly, absence of dialogue with other party is an important reason leading to conflict. Thirdly,
Very true.
distrust about the authorities that they would resolve the conflict. There is no trust at all among the people. Fourthly, delay in resolving the contesting issues could be an important factor resulting into conflict.
Very
The other
true.
factors, yes, the other factors include historical, political, social, economic, as well as geographical. And lastly, I would like to add corruption is another very important factor which results into injustice and thus leads to conflict. So the factors which are leading to conflict could be internal as well as external in case of a country. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Justice delayed is justice denied, and it could be delayed for any reason. Yeah, you said it so well. Thank you so much. Rebecca, would you like to say something?
Yes, again, I'm really enjoying listening to everyone's comments. I'm learning as I go, as always. So, I mean, this is a huge question, and I know that we have a lot of input, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But I think that what we've learned over the last decade in working, really, which is a new area within Rotary in terms of peace building, is really thinking about peace as a system. So I really actually appreciated Mandar's comment. I know other people brought it up about the inner process, the personal process of peace, because I think that everyone's journey with peace is personal and it's very complex, and it's in a certain sense never ending because it's not something, peace is not something you check off a box and then continue. It's something you're always revisiting. So without complicating it too much, I don't think there are easy check marks to say what causes conflict. I think that conflict is a system, and it starts with the inner work as individuals, and everyone does that. We can talk about trauma that happens. We can talk about emotions, coexistence, and that begins when we're young in our families. It's something that needs to be better addressed in schools because it starts to build out into the larger societal structures. So those traumas are actually expressed in injustice, in the persecution of individuals. So really thinking about how we can start with ourselves and build out into society, I think is the most important. It's again complex, but I think that that's what we need to start thinking about, is something that is a system that we're always working on at multiple levels.
Very true. Very true. Pravinji, sorry, Mandarji, would you like to say something here?
I mean, I'm just enjoying these. These are, I hope this is being recorded and we can get these clips. Rebecca, thanks for saying beautiful words.
Yes.
Beautiful words. I feel like
she resonated you, right? She was, many thoughts were similar and coming from different parts of the world.
I live in America, so I know the incidents that happen on school campuses, college campuses. They don't happen in any other country, and most people get stuck with the gun debate. It's not about the gun; it's about the state of mind and the trauma and the parenting and all that goes along, right? So
yes,
I think
we read about it, and our blood curdles when we read about it, that children, suddenly somebody comes in with a gun, and then there are some issues at home, or he has been depressed, and then he comes with a gun and then shoots down children, and people are all covering under the benches and tables in the schools.
Sadly, that is only momentary, Girija.
Yes.
Because we are so desensitized, we are immune to the news of violence today. We move on, right? Because the news cycle keeps it for a 24-hour cycle, move on.
Absolutely.
So I feel what is, in addition to what
Rebecca
said, Rebecca and Dikshit sir has said,
yes.
What can lead to violence is, an unhappy mind.
Yes.
Right. So a mind that has any negative emotion, anger, frustration, jealousy, greed, blame, guilt.
Absolutely.
We will experience, that negative emotion. And then in that negative emotion, we may hurt ourselves or we may hurt somebody else.
Absolutely. And when a sea of people experience it, probably, that is when a revolution breaks out.
But I teach these days in the gangs in Los Angeles and other places. Okay. And one of my students gave a very interesting perspective. He spent 44 years in prison, 44 years in prison for multiple murders, even inside the prison. And he said, hurt people hurt others is what people hear in the inner city of America, right? But he says that's not correct. So I said, okay, Philip, what do you mean? He says, not all hurt people will hurt others, right? Depends on who your grandmother was, what books do you read, what food you eat. So hurt people may hurt others, but then he said that's incomplete. Healed people will always heal others. So, unless we raise our human consciousness and unless we stop seeing the other, there will always be violence of different kinds, right? Wow. But once we bring that person into our circle of belonging, like he is mine, I am his, then violence will drop. So violence will end where love will begin.
Wow. It is amazing. You've taken the discussion to a different level. Amazing. Yes. Very true. I'm so very happy that you joined. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Colonel Rohit?
Yeah, so thank you, Giraji. Thank you.
We want that.
So let me, in the initial thoughts, I went from the individual to the global level. Let me come down from global to the individual level in this one, right? So there's a much more better understanding of what's happening around the world as well. There can be any scope for violence today, right? The peace can be broken for many reasons. So if I go back to what I was doing in Sierra Leone, for example, it was an economic reason, natural resources, blood diamond, Liberia, Sierra Leone, that's the conflict. When you go to a geopolitical level and you talk about, two sides, NATO, otherwise government, US, Syrian crisis, other crisis, what is now erupting in Ukraine, these are all power brokerages happening along the globe, leading to violence, right? Everybody wants to hold and say. Internally also, if you see, political things like participation in a government, we saw what happened in Sri Lanka. We saw what happened in Bosnia Herzegovina. Even when you see disparity of incomes, right? Employment, incomes, you see what happened in South Africa. You talk about the elite employment and the elitism, what happened in South Africa initially led to violence. Unemployment, again, Northern Ireland and other places. So when you see these causes, natural resources, government aid, infrastructure development, like what happened in Mexico, your asset management of the country, disparity like somebody brought out, all leads there. But ironically, there are even social causes. If I see how a UN aid is distributed, say in countries like Rwanda, Sudan, you see the disparities there. You see the education system, and then again I go back to Kosovo, Uganda again, South Africa, Haiti. These are the countries which have faced violence because of only sheer disparity and access to education, health services. Again those countries like Burundi and others. So if I have to collate reasons at the global level, there are many such reasons which happen. Come down to a national level, and I will not talk about any other country. I'll talk about my country. Right? In my country, violence erupts because of, divisive politics. It happens because of our lack of education and being able to imbibe what is being done and to be valid by caste, creed, and religion and such small divisive factors. It happens because there's an issue today on the street. People have become so low on emotional quotient that they're willing to kill somebody just because he has taken a little bit more time to make a paratha on the street and give it to that person. So that's the level of the decline. And when you come then to your societies, how fragile we are, Brijaji, today, how fragile. We get opinionated so fast, and we become so much subservient to our opinions that we are not even willing to hear or listen to somebody else's opinion. And then we castigate people, we typify people, and that is how the society is getting broken. And when the society gets broken, the last level remains the human being. And everybody from Rebecca to Dikshitji to Mandar have said and talked about that point that it's that human resilience which is weak. It is the capacity to not take a no today, which is also leading to violence at all levels. Households violence, you have street violence, you have violence in colonies and habitats, in schools. There are children fighting and killing each other. There was a case 3 years back in a school in Delhi. So there is no level. And when you see all this, the proponents which are challenging you are all to do with how it is coming glaring in your face. So whether it's a movie, Hollywood, Bollywood, Tollywood can change shape. Whether it's how people the gore of violence, how it's projected on a TV channel today, how it's coming up to us. It's all being seen by the next generation, and that sanctity of delineating them. Even movies, when you used to rate a movie as a particular AAA or whatever for violence or whatever, it is losing meaning. The access is gained. The deep world, the illegal world is so much infiltrated into your social media. They are prompting kids on, and there's a violence on cyber violence, right? Cyber violence is proliferating absolutely deep, and it is hitting our societies, our next generation. So there is no level playing field here left in which a cause of a violence is not being cropped up globally, and you can name anything and it can be violence on anything. Even when you go and speak on a peace seminar somewhere, it can actually lead to violence because somebody sitting in the crowd may not agree with you. So that is the challenge of peace today, because the proponents of violence are so huge, and violence is also a tool today. It's a geopolitical tool to create unrest in cities, townships, countries, regions within a country, and to make that other country look bad even. So there are all kinds of amalgamation of funds, narco-terrorism. You see everything. It all is leading to more and more violence, and there is plethora of I can say evidence staring at us today in India, in UK. You name a country, no country is left beyond this. So I can go on and on to give you more and more reasons why violence happens, and it can be anything to do with social disparity and your mental state to geopolitical theater. But I think the underlying factor remains how well and how aware are you to utilize your mental faculties to discern a cause and be able to be not presumptuous to be led into violence yourself. So that is the key finally for the human race. If we can evolve, I think we'll do a much more better sustenance of our human values itself. Human values are dying. People are compromising. Compromise also leads to violence. A person is standing in a queue today in India to get a particular thing done in a very bona fide manner through a government agency. Somebody bribes, like somebody said, corruption. I think Shri Praveen said. And the moment you break that line, it leads to a tussle, right?
Yes.
And in the tussle, it can lead to anything else. Just imagine losing precious lives for what? For what were we losing? To express ourselves, people are losing lives to even express the basic freedom of expression in many democracies. If you today talk in a street and somebody doesn't like that to happen, you might be killed. So imagine the world. You imagine women. We had a beautiful session about that supply chain, about the roundtable and the women in the afternoon. You look at the plight of people in rural sectors.
Yeah.
Where does that lady go? So many crimes being committed, not reported. We can't take pride in not reporting of crime. We should have better laws. While we have laws, the implementation is so poor. The entire country came together at Nirbhaya, right?
Yes.
But do you want to tell me that Nirbhayas don't happen? Yes, maybe not to a degree, but it's happening by the minute.
Absolutely.
So what have we done to evolve as a society? And no country is to be spared. I mean, there is no country, including the most developed, which can say we are holier than thou. So we are living in very trying times, and causes of violence can emanate from anything today to the highest level of NATO, non-NATO, hot, cold war, this, that, cold war, anything. So violence is now become actually in many philosophies a way of war. And I'm not making any bones about it. There are cultures today ideologically developed. And if I give you one example, don't mind, I will name Pakistan because Pakistan has been my unfriendly state for a long time. They used to have the Quranic concept of war in 1971. Everybody in that country, from political to the military level, has been practicing it. And if you were to go and your audience to go and read that by Brigadier Malik, you will realize today, and it's not me saying, it's all votaries of peace today saying that many cases lead to that country because it has become a hub. Good terror, bad terror, snakes in the backyard, Hillary Clinton, too late. Right? So there has been all kinds of at the geopolitical level, and people have not called out those people or those countries, and that is why they prosper. Funding can happen from China. Turkey can today show eyes. North Korea can threaten USA. That's a macro level.
Yes. Yeah.
But at the human level, what is guiding it? It is sheer, mind, ego, which finally comes to the fore. Finally. So if I have the power of a Trump, the ego will come. I'm not saying Trump is bad or good. But if I have a power of a fool like Imran Khan, I will be swayed by his military. So it's all where you go. It's a human mind being, manipulated at all levels to inflict that violence. Otherwise, you tell me, if I actually tell anybody, and I've been in the military, right? There used to be military people trained, and when you give them a chicken to wring the neck for survival, people were very not confident. And I got a goat to kill to survive. And in my entire sphere of 200 commandos, that is a special forces kind of a training, not even 3 of us were together to kill that goat to survive. So by human nature, you're not there to kill. So it is such an indoctrination which happens at the highest level to get you to kill. It is such a level of low EQ which makes a human man, slap his wife or his daughter or anybody else in family. It is such a weakness. It's not a strength. So I think if you take violence, let's not glorify violence. It's a very weak state, whether you are a political leader or you are a human being staying in a domesticated house. So that's from my side. I think I can go on, but let's say here.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit. Colonel, you really covered it so beautifully and so well. And yes, it is a very low and weak state. All of us agree, but then it does intimidate people. It does put us in a state of unrest, and it has to stop. Tamanna has seen it. Tamanna, would you like to talk about it? What are the factors that you have seen, the causes of human conflict? Right? Because she wrote in her blog, in the same situation, there are people who are there facing the bomb, and then they are feeling so unhappy, angry, what is happening to us? And in the same situation, there are people who are thinking about the future. What is going to be the consequences? They don't seem to worry that today I may die, but they're not angry. They're thinking about that. So it is really very amazing. Tamanna, would you like to talk about it? Then we'll move on to the challenges. Yes.
Thank you, Girija. Thank you. And I would actually like to pick up from where Colonel Rohit Dev left off, which is that by human nature, we're not designed to kill or incite violence, and we're by nature, and I think this was reiterated by Mr. Mandarapte as well, that by nature we're peaceful human beings, and an unhappy mind is what leads to violence. And what was interesting was that it was pointed out that human minds are manipulated, and violence or conflict is a strategic geopolitical tool for many actors, organizations, not just states today. And taking off from there, I totally believe in that, whatever's been said, and I reaffirm that. So I would just like to point out my experience with women wage peace and how it's kind of defined where to start solving this problem of violence from. So this experience, like coming off from everything that's been said, we found out that it's human nature that is inherently peaceful. So starting peace building work should start from the individual mind. And therefore, like we see a lot of peace initiatives in this region, in Israel, Palestine, for example. Oslo, which is one of the first peace initiatives between the two leaders, failed. And the reason for that was because the society was not prepared for peace. The society for histories, for ages, has been told that the other side has been dehumanized as terrorists, there are enemies, and we're never going to make peace. And suddenly, when peace was sprung upon them, all the humans are inherently peace-loving beings. They could not wrap their head around it. So what Women Wage Peace does is it interacts with contact hypothesis, which is it humanizes the other side, humanizes the people who've been manipulated to be our enemies for so long. So it brings together Palestinians and Israeli women on a ground of commonality, not on the ground of being enemies. It's a peace which doesn't start with, okay, what should I compromise to get peace with my enemy? But it's a peace which starts with, we're both sisters or mothers on opposite sides of the border who've lost human lives to the conflict, who've lost family members, and we both want an end to it. So you come together with a commonality. And then when we have workshops, like there are trips or seminars that you share your trauma, you talk to the other person, and through that activity, you humanize the other person. You realize that it's not my life that is affected by them, but it's our lives affected by the conflict. And we need a mutual settlement to that. So we do this bottom-up kind of peace building work with human-to-human contact between different people. And I think that is extremely important, because when the rockets were happening, I could see the role of media and politicians in the way they were dehumanizing the other side. I had friends who lived in Palestine, friends who lived in the West Bank, contacts who experienced the same rockets by Israel, and Israeli friends who experienced rockets by Hamas and the Palestinian side. And each of them had a political disapproval of the other because of the rockets. It only increased hatred against the other. And even though, and I think the most scary thing for me was, or not for me, my other Palestinian friends in Israel, was not the rockets, was not being in the shelter at 3 a.m., was not their house being bombed, but it was walking on the streets and being attacked or killed because of their identity, because they wear a headscarf, or because they're Palestinian, which is something they cannot let go of. And the rockets will subside. In a week, there will be a peace agreement signed on paper, which will stop this military conflict. But what about the conflict that is so deeply rooted within our identities, something that this makes us carry a fear within our hearts, like all the time. And I think today's day and age, conflict is becoming more and more dangerous. It always starts with greed or human nature, which wants more resources, land, etc. But in today's day and age, it's intrinsically being combined with ideology, with identities. And the more you bring in these intangible elements to conflict, the more intractable the conflict becomes, and the more layers that are added to it, and the more long lasting it will be. And I think that's what scares me the most. There's a wave of populism which is sweeping us across the world, be it Islamic, Hindu, or Christian, white supremacism. It's always being expressed in terms of hate towards the other. And I think conflict with this element are the most dangerous. Thank you.
Very, very well experienced and expressed. Both amazing at this age. Yeah. And like you said, the various causes for conflict, whatever it is, they are rationalized, politicized, and people dehumanized. And unless you see the human suffering and you feel that empathy, it is not going to work out. So you will not be able to, the women getting into it and getting a different view of it and presenting it to other people makes a lot of difference. That is true. Now we move on to the next section of our discussion. So what are the challenges in building peace and resolving conflicts? In fact, when we discuss the causes, we have discussed the challenges in a way, right? So we have, because it is the mindset, it is the barrier, it is the unwillingness to accept, it is greed, it is power, greed for power, yes. But still, to put it in a nutshell, very, very, crisp, how 2 or 3 per person. If we can put it across, that would be wonderful. Yes. So shall we start with Mandar now? The challenges.
Challenges.
What are the challenges? building peace?
Challenges to building peace. I think from my limited perspective, it is people who have peace take it for granted. And people who are, enjoying democratic values or going to the movies or whatever those things we enjoy doing, we are taking it for granted. And we are thinking like, okay, RDX will take care of it, right? And so that is where we have to wake up as a society that it's apathy, civil society apathy, and too much trust given to politicians or media channels, and not involving ourselves in creating a peaceful community in my neighborhood, in my building, in my organization, right? So I think that is where I am coming from. I had a wake-up call, a key moment of truth 5 years ago, that violence can happen anywhere, anytime, at a Starbucks, at a movie theater. And the flicker in my head was a school shooting, like, oh my God, it can happen in my neighborhood. And only when it happens to me personally, while I'm walking on London Bridge, for example, or in my neighborhood school, maybe I will do something about it. So that thought bothered me that day. That thought bothered me that day. That, my God, we are waiting for it to happen. When it happens, we put flowers and candles and hugs and say, oh, it should not have happened. So there is compassion, but it is dormant. It is just lying.
We are not sensitized.
So we have to awaken. We have to proactively awaken the compassion in our hearts.
Yes, the collective consciousness had to wake up. Then only it will be possible. Individually,
civil society. No politician should be involved. No media, Bollywood sports star should be involved, because all that is money. And so that is where I started thinking, can we make money while promoting peace? And that will at least keep the momentum going, right? So that is...
if people find that peace is lucrative, then at least then they would promote it. Wow.
I'm discovering many things. It's possible.
Did you find a way? Did you find a way to make peace?
Of course. I just got hired as a peace builder by the UN mission in Cyprus. So I'm a petroleum engineer. I have nothing to do with this peace building rabbit hole, but here I am. So I think all you need is an entrepreneurial mind, a yes mind, and the universe supports you.
Wonderful. Praveenji, would you like to talk about this, the challenges and in building peace? And of course, you've seen it all. He writes about Naxalites and the issues that they cause to the society and why it has happened. That's amazing. His white papers. Yes.
Well, as I said, as we discussed about the factors, the challenges depend upon each conflict. But still, we can say that mainly polarization among the warring groups and refusal to come on the negotiating table is the important factor. Each side prefers to be in their own cocoons and many a times keeps on having imaginary ideas about the other side. If the authorities keep on delaying the resolution of such conflicting issues, resolving the disputes runs into problems. Many a times, the colonial masters indulged in divide and rule and promoted the conflicts. We just heard the case of Palestine and Israel and other places. Right. There are external as well as internal factors which we will discuss separately, but they result in the continuation of the conflicts. Yes. Similarly, if there is a rampant corruption, any amount of efforts to resolve the conflict, they're bound to fail. That is, in a nutshell, what I would say are the challenges.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Rebecca, your call on it. Yes. The challenges.
It's hard for me to not talk about the solutions, but I'm going to wait. I think that, and apologies if someone has already said this, but I think one of the biggest problems, and I know that for the United States this is true, is one of the biggest challenges is fear. Because the grabbing of power, the need to dominate really stems from a fear of losing your culture, fear of losing your status in society. So that is one of the biggest challenges, is how do we reduce fear in individuals, therefore reduce fear in culture. I also think that the media environment, including social media, and the isolation of individuals is a huge problem. Again, I'm speaking mostly from experience in the United States, but I can imagine that we can see that around the globe as well.
Yes.
And then one of the issues that we're trying to address directly through the work of Rotary is this loss of community, and this loss of contact with others. So, as we were talking about earlier, like, how do you have empathy for people when you don't actually have contact with them? How do you feel a sense of community when you're not with them? So we need to find ways. Technology is not going away. And as we see from this session, there can be wonderful outcomes of technology, but how do we use it for good and create both physical and virtual communities to bring ourselves in what I believe is the potential of the global community, the local and the global, and bringing that together. And a hold for the solutions piece.
Beautiful. Actually, when she was talking about fear, I just remembered that in nature, animals usually do not attack us unless they perceive that we are a threat to them. So nature is showing the way, but we don't take the cue. That is the issue. Colonel Rohitji, would you like to talk about the challenges in a nutshell?
So nutshell, just pointers, right? So, and when I say challenge, you will get also a ray of hope. What needs to be aligned? Say at the geopolitical spectrum, the defunct nature of world bodies is a huge challenge. Unless these bodies are robust and action is meaningful, you are leaving a lot of scope for high-handed action, unilateral action, and not a collective dream at all. The hoard for natural resources and dominating those resources for the future, whether it's a semiconductor or a uranium, it can all be any kind of mineral, is a challenge because nobody understands what is sharing and caring in any which case in terms of the geopolitical level, because they want to get their hold on that asset first.
Yes.
Having a commonality of peaceful existence is a challenge, because civilizationally, as Rebecca was hinting and alluding to, we have been divided. So is the dominance what is to be done? Whether it was the Christianity as a religion, Islam as a religion, or such factions which grew into civilizations, is a challenge, because no matter what you did in the last about 8 or 10 decades, there was always an underlying principle that why you were doing it. There was a motive behind it. And when the motive gets called out, there is a violence. It's a challenge. When you also see at the level of, say, a country, and again, I only talk about my country because I have to be a critic here only. It's a challenge. The educational system and the awareness today, 7 decades plus in this country, not a focus. Similar to healthcare, but I talk about education, which impacts violence. Because if we were much more wiser and aware and educated, we could have made very rational choices. We wouldn't have got consumed by pettiness and caste, creed, religion, and such like divisive elements. It's a challenge. It's a challenge when you have social disparity in any country. It's a challenge to contain a conflict, whether it's a country or a region. It always goes beyond borders. You can take any example in history as well, including the Boko Haram. To be on the safer side of calling out any country, it's a challenge. When you come down to a more domesticated level, your thought and your personal will to survive, if it manifests into violent activities, how to curb it is a challenge. So I think challenge to peace are many, and it all stems out, like I said initially, from the mind. And dare I say that you can debate this ad nauseum, but we have reached in a world such a critical stage that such dominations at the geopolitical level are become mandatory, right? India first, America first, everything is first, right? So when everything is first, you are leaving a little lesser room to co-share resources. If you actually see how much of coal is in the world, you can actually share. But today, because of your interest and your blocking of sea lanes, is gone up the roof. It's hit many countries. The situation in Ukraine, maybe a troublesome internal situation for Ukraine, but globally it has got a lot of economic impact. So similarly, when you see, we are not stitching the threads, and whatever we have, envisioned in the UN and given a lot of Nobel Peace Prizes, they have never led to a thought collectively at the highest apex level, even a G20 or a UN meet, to say how to culture global citizenship first. And unless you do that, the division starts right at the top. My country, your country, comes down. And then infighting within the country, something inborn and something infused from outside world onto you. India is an economic giant, so there will be 150 reasons for many countries to get India down, whatever way they can. So all these manifestations lead to violence. If you see a small example, I mean, what has China got to do with POK, right? But made a statement when we abrogated 370. The reason being, part of that POK was gifted by Pakistan illegally to China to make the CPEC. Economic constraints to be safeguarded, so you shoot your mouth off globally because you're a hegemon. What will it lead to finally? Violence. It will. So it is leading to skirmishes somewhere else. It's violence. When you go and impose your will, and that semiconductor is equally important to China as US. But who's the beef in between? Taiwan, right? So the hamburger is there. So when I'm saying all this, it only alludes to the factor that resources, you take petty violence on a street, money crunch, right? A poor man. How long can a poor man see a sedan of BMWs and Audis going past him, living in luxury, when he can't make his basic ends meet? So there's inequality. It's a challenge, right? So inequality of any distribution is a challenge. And finally, it's the human psychology, which is the best, the most grave challenge, because the human has evolved to be so selfish today that it's very difficult to think otherwise, right? The human psychology breaks marriages. Love marriages get broken because you have egos then coming in. So you can see it at any spectrum. So it is not, contingent to any level of the spectrum, right? From a human to the geopolitical level, there is a spectrum in which we face challenges. So I think there's no end to challenges. Let's hear Tamanna as well, because Tamanna, yes. Can you share your blog as well? I'm intrigued to read it, please.
I will send the link to you.
Thank
I will.
you.
Yes. Yes, Tamanna, over to you.
Thank you, Colonel Dave, and thank you, Kira. I agree. There are so many different levels in which violence occurs, and each level has its own set of challenges to deal with. And over here, I think I would just like to again talk about the kind of challenges that I have faced while working with Women Wage Peace in terms of creating peace building. And that basically stems with uniting all state structures when there's interstate violence or intercommunal violence, and there are organizations trying to build peace. I feel like many times these organizations or track to initiatives work in a vacuum, where because they don't need that much government support, because they're NGOs, they have international donors, they carry out their work. But sometimes when it's like interstate or intercommunal, it's very dependent on government faculties. And sometimes there are governments have served to be spoilers for peace, like spoilers who benefit out of violence. Like I think Mr. Mandarapte mentioned that there should be a way of, I think, benefiting out of creating peace, which still we're lacking. Yes. And the motivation that spoilers have is to gain out of creating conflict. And even I think Rebecca mentioned the role of media. Anytime a little spur happens in this conflict, the peace building that we're doing on ground just falls back to square one, because the media exaggerates every little incident, generalizes act of one single individual's terrorist act as something relating to the whole community. And then we're back to square one with the hatred and social psychological processes of generalizing biases between communities. And that is very difficult with this challenging level of an ongoing conflict. Conflict is ongoing here right now. If tomorrow there could be a little act of terrorism, and all the work we've done on ground will fall apart. And I think the latest challenge that we experienced was also like one of our biggest strengths, which is Women Wage Peace recently partnered with Women of the Sun, which is a sister organization in Palestine. And we realized if we're doing an interstate dialogue, we need both parties to participate and get across barriers of interstate conflict. And this was supposed to be a strength, but we realized every time we try to create an environment of contact hypothesis, get Palestinian women into Israel, share our stories together, every time we try to create that sort of community that Rebecca was talking about, we realized we're faced with a plethora of challenges arising out of the political limbo that conflict has put these two states in. We need a lot of permits from the Israeli state to get these women out of Palestine. These women need permits from their own state to go out of Palestine into Israel. And we organized this huge event in the Dead Sea, which was supposed to have 500 women from Palestine and Israel sharing their stories, and a seminar about challenges of peace, etc. And with all the permits worked out, we couldn't have transport. Then we requested a German NGO for transport, which sponsored it. Then there was the COVID. We needed PCR tests, vaccine certificates. After we figured out all of this, 3 days before the conference, there was a little prisoner escape. A few Palestinian prisoners escaped from the Israeli jails, and that just sent the security apparatus on full alarms. And all the progress that we had created over the years in building trust between Palestinians and Israelis was broken in a minute of this political skirmish. So I think all the track to movements towards peace, whatever progress we're making, and I think it's huge progress, it's so dependent on the political reality of the conflict, which is extremely volatile and it changes minute by minute. And whatever progress we've done or we have been doing, it completely, it's a prisoner of these political developments, and it's so dependent on them. And just as soon as this prisoner escape happened, Israel tightened its security apparatus within Palestine, and there was a barrage of protests from Palestinians, and Israel's retaliation to that protest wasn't good. And again, the very same women who had humanized the Israelis in Palestine again started looking at them as occupiers. You came into my family, this happened, I lost. So it's a huge chain, it's a process that we're, unless tracked to initiatives and this process of building a community, people to people contact, unless this is freed from the reality, the political reality of the conflict, I think it's very difficult to make progress. And
true, it is. When you spoke about whom you empathized with the previous day, today you are looking upon them as perpetrator. So it is the perpetrator victim cycle, which it is endless. And somebody whom you look as perpetrator, again you look at them as victim, again they become perpetrator in a minute.
And there are so many different actors in violence, I think, today in conflicts, interstate conflicts. There are non-state actors. There are individual people who want to wage because they see war as the only way to get peace or their rights. So they carry forward the violence perspective. And then there are people who want peace through talks, etc. So there are so many different actors, each involved in their own version of attaining peace. And the action of one element in the conflict can derail the progress made by the others. So it's an entire ecosystem. And unless all of these different organisms or all of these different partners are on board to understand what kind of comprehensive approach you want to go further with, then it's very difficult to build this kind of people-to-people community, bottom-up peace.
Wonderfully captured. Yes. So it came from experience and the sharing of personal experience. I value that. So now we move on to the next section, which Rebecca was referring to. What are the solutions? Do we have solutions? Healthy, viable approaches that work? Do you have anything from your personal experience or professional experience that you can share here? And then that will lead us to the actionable steps that we can take. So, of course, it requires a lot of political will. Yes. Yes, Ashwini?
Yeah. Girija, if you want to just take a moment and ask the room if they would want to contribute to the challenges, if they've heard something.
Yes. Anybody would like to? I see here Suraj Hegde, Dr. Balan Amdar, Hema ji is here. Anybody would like to comment? I think there is silence. Okay, so we just, anytime anybody wants to say, please use your raise hand channel, raise hand, then maybe I'll be able to see that, or Ashwini can spot it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I also wanted to really commend all the speakers right now who brought in so many challenges onto our radar today. But I also feel like, why this is Praveen sir is sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. Go ahead. No problem.
Sorry. So But I also feel like we didn't really addressed what Tamanna was talking about, the feminist side of the violence, right? Like what are the challenges that I think women face around me are, yes, one, ego, right, or patriarchal ego that's built in. But I also feel like women are feel unsafe to take steps
Absolutely.
towards building peace, even if it's their own little house, right? Because I know my maid, the house help, and her sister and her sister-in-law, everybody gets beaten every day by their husbands, right? So, but they are very, very scared. Economic disparity again comes in place. Even though they are working, right, and they are financially
And
stable,
what will others say?
exactly. So I think that point, that is a huge challenge. I don't know how
So the
we are going to get
mindset
over.
to come out of your own conditioning.
Yes.
So this
Yeah.
absolutely, that is another level of challenge actually. If there are the barriers from within are the biggest to break.
Yeah, within and the immediate
And
societal
also the
barriers.
society.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Yeah.
Can I
At
just
different
add
levels,
something,
as he said,
Girija
it
ji?
exists. Yes,
I
yes.
want to just amplify
Please.
what Ashwini ji has said, and we mentioned in passing as well earlier. But let me just, bring a very critical point here. This is what the societal thing is. For many years, and I'm going by Bollywood movies of 1960s, which I must have seen as a kid. I don't see Bollywood anymore. And at that time, there's a woman, right? There's a woman. So if I'm a woman, my son is very dear to me. My daughter is super dear to me. Correct? You all agree, right? How come when my son marries some other woman and she comes to house,
She's
at many
not dear.
fragmented societal level in India, she's not so dear to me. She can never be equal to my daughter. And if my daughter is also not there, only my son is there, she can actually never, get that place completely. So what is it? And it's happening from whose heart? A woman's heart,
Exactly.
right? So it is the way the society has been built, curated, and shaped from so many years. It needs a change. Stigma, societal pressure, all are there. But this one question's answer, I have not got. I have not got, because everybody is so superfluously in our society, so good about everybody on social media about their daughter-in-laws. But when I actually meet daughter-in-laws and I interact with people, I get a different vibe. So tell me, all ladies here who are here, and if something is on the attendee list, please tell me what ails here. What ails here, and especially in the Indian society. And this is something I have never got an answer to.
It is there everywhere, because if you see, everybody loves Raymond, you will see that those
Right.
dynamics taking place, right? So it is universal, but I think it is more to do with the willingness to embrace the other as your own, or rather, like Mandar put it, not see the other, see everybody as yourself. If you see everyone as the extension of yourself, then it is so tough.
In the morning, the same decision. Why is that mother-in-law not the super enabler for this woman to take the highest steps and soar higher when she comes to you, right? It's a gift.
Yeah.
Your son has married that woman. It's a gift, right?
Yes.
How does it take place? I'm not saying it doesn't take place. There are many people progressive.
There are many families.
Very nice.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the other side.
Yes.
So I have something, if I may add. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure whether it's the mother-in-law these days. I'm talking, so I'm like now 70 almost. Yeah. So I think these days, most of the at least urban mother-in-laws are far more particular about encouraging their daughters-in-law, but it's the daughters-in-law. I mean, we are more scared. She'll not feel bad now. Oh, I'll do this. Keep quiet. But whereas earlier it was the other way around. I think it has changed a lot in the past few years, this particular aspect.
But like he said, whichever way it is, Hemaji, it is not fair, right? How you would treat your mother, the same kind of love. What is the problem in
I
extending
think
to
there's
your...
a threat there seen
There
by
is
both.
threat. Both,
There's a
yes.
threat there seen by both.
Yes.
Both the
Both
daughter.
perceive the other as a threat, and probably, the husband becomes the property for which both are vying for. That is a very difficult situation. Hemaji, you said it very well. The reversal of roles and the reversal of situation is happening. Yes, very well said. Absolutely.
And I have the point to make. It may be childish.
Yes. No.
In the whole scenario, because the world is facing so much violence and so much trouble. But somewhere I feel that when we were children, we had we were influenced by a lot of good, morally sound movies, books,
Absolutely.
serials, everything. Even our parents were telling.
And even grandmom stories, right?
Yes. And now
Absolutely.
what is projected by the media? So they are influencing even the children. And I think that generally, because the violence that is caused is, in communities but for general day-to-day life, I think, if we can go back in some way, I don't know how, to
that is so beautiful.
some kind of...
Imaji, I also read your comment wherein you have written, that children play games and then you kill somebody, you only shoot him, and then after a minute he gets up and walks.
Yeah.
So where are they going to feel the pain?
He cannot understand the pain.
Absolutely. Yes. So you make it a game, right? Human life. So you have very beautifully put it. But yes, these are the challenges, and these are, again, yes, Mandar would like to say something. Go ahead, please, Mandar.
I think Tamanna's hand was up before mine. So let me...
Okay. No, Mandar, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, my analysis, having lived outside India for 25 years, is if the whole world is a home, then India has always been the prayer room. It has always been the place where people have come for solace, for transformation, and new thought. So now that we have to look into our own culture and tradition, that were the rishis smart enough to design a solution for this, because they were foresight. They had foresight.
Yes.
So my work these days is based on raising human consciousness, where we in India, of course, we know this as theory, that you are not the body, you're not the mind, you are the consciousness.
Absolutely.
You are the soul. But we have not been given an experience of what that is, right? So what happens when you negate, when I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my intellect, I'm not even my memories. I have memories, but I'm not my memories, right? This journey leads you to a space where you are everywhere and nowhere. Absolutely. And if that experience becomes your concrete experience, then your attachment to your own human body, your own mind and whims and thoughts, because we act on our thoughts, right? And we don't know what thoughts, we just act on our thoughts, and they can be manipulated. So if we can learn this wisdom of differentiating and keeping a distance between me and my thoughts, right? I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts.
Yes.
So that is where I think we have to promote this wisdom of India that was thought through in India, but it is not only for Indians.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Just like when you eat Chinese food, you don't become Chinese. When you eat Swiss chocolates, you are not from Switzerland. Yes, you listen to Beethoven music, you are not German. All your gadgets are made in Vietnam, China, somewhere. So we accept food from every part of the world. We accept technology from every part of the world, music from every part of the world. So we should also accept wisdom from every part of the world. Wisdom that helps us to heal. Because unless you heal, the mother-in-law has also been,
Has gone
traumatized
through
by
that cycle. Yes,
So
absolutely.
unless, and medical science is proving it, that this trauma is intergenerational. It passes on from DNA to DNA. So
Yes,
unless
absolutely.
you're able to heal your own trauma and look at your own situation with a new thought, with a
Yes.
new consciousness, the consciousness that is trapped in the situation cannot look for a new solution, right? As Albert Einstein said, in order to
Absolutely.
look for a solution, you have to step out of the situation that created the
Situation.
problem in the first place.
Yes.
So I think that is where I feel that people of the Indic tradition, and there are many people in America now followers of this tradition. There are yoga students
Absolutely.
everywhere.
Very true.
We have to go beyond the upward dog, downward dog, downward dog type of yoga, which is just physical exercise.
Right. That
So
is
I think
not a real yoga. It's a mind.
the solution
It is
lies.
yeah.
The solution lies in all the ancient traditions and cultures.
Absolutely.
I can only speak for India because I'm born here, but I'm sure this universal wisdom may be in the Mayan tradition, maybe in the
it
Inca
is
tradition,
Nepalese.
but we don't know,
We don't know.
right? So I
Exactly.
think that is where we have to own
Whatever
everything.
gives peace to humanity and uplifts the soul.
Yes,
We need to do
we
that.
should. Just like we go for Indian food, we have mango lassi in Los Angeles.
Yes.
We should also look for Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Ashtavakra Gita, Bhagavad Gita. What's the wisdom of this? But for that, we have to educate that ourselves.
Absolutely.
We also
Unless
don't
you can
know.
answer questions.
All we know is, yada yada dharmasya glanir bharata, mar usko Arjun. Right? That's all we know.
Exactly.
Nothing
So
in
when
the
children
18th
ask questions, we don't know answers. So unless we know the answers, you cannot educate the world.
That is why when I listen to Tamanna, I see an Arjun in her. When I'm seeing RDX, he's a seeker. He just said he wants to know. I think that is where we have to use that. We have to give people an experience of what is consciousness.
Right.
Not talk about it, not read it, feel it as an experience. That, hey, I am the same. Whatever she's going through, I am the same.
Yes,
Doesn't matter,
absolutely.
man.
Why doesn't that touch me?
And that is
whatever
in the
she's going through.
Western literature, it's called emotional intelligence.
Yes.
But they have no idea how to raise it. How can you be emotionally intelligent if you don't know?
I think we are born with it, but then somehow we become insensitized to it. You take a 6-month-old baby to a place, and then some other baby cries. The child does not even see the other baby, but immediately this child's face becomes red, and the child starts to cry. So that is generated naturally. I don't know where it all goes when we grow up. Where it goes.
Like I will just share one more example. I just did a temple tour of South India. I was in Tamil Nadu for 2 weeks. We don't know much about South Indian temples and the Chola dynasty and the Pandya dynasty. Nothing. I knew nothing about this. There was a temple. It's called Chidambaram Temple.
Yes.
And it's fascinating. There was of course a Shiva. It's a Shiva.
Yes.
It's a Shiva
temple.
But they say, wait. There is a rahasyam.
Yes.
Chidambaram rahasyam. And then they open the door. And lo and behold, there is nothing there. So which culture created a space to worship space?
Exactly.
God is space, ether.
Absolutely. Yes.
And which
and
tradition?
Ether is everywhere.
And it's everywhere. I think that is the universalization of that experience. It is there in our books, in our scriptures. Some of us may know also to chant Lalita Sahasranam or whatever Vishnu Sahasranam, but we don't know the meaning of it.
Exactly.
We don't know the experience of it. I think we have to self-study. We have to do it, and then we have to share it with whoever is ready for it.
Mandar, sometimes even without knowing the meaning, you experience it. I have. You experience it.
I don't know Sanskrit. But literally, when I went to the Meenakshi temple in my temple tour, I cried. I have no idea why I was crying.
Exactly. The vibrations.
So, these are, you can say,
that the ether that is coming through, right?
Yeah, these are spiritual moments. And my Western friends sometimes get confused with spirituality and religion. And for them, what I say is, spirituality is the banana. Religion is the banana peel. Right? But today the banana peel is on the ground It's in your hand and we are fighting. The banana is on the ground. We are fighting. My way is the only way. I will only pray for my kind of people. Other people can go to hell. Like, all these are stupidity. The banana is your humanity, is love, is peace, is joy, but that is on the ground. And we are holding on to, my way is the only way to God, and nobody knows what is God. I think that is where we have to educate ourselves. Just like we consume food, technology, music from different parts of the globe, we have to own this, and we have to learn a little bit about every tradition and every culture. I think that
Absolutely.
is
And
the
embrace that. Yes.
that is the holistic
Absolutely.
solution. Otherwise, we will eye for an eye will be there. There is nothing happens for anybody,
Very
and
true.
that is a civil society has to wake up. Civil society.
Yes.
So,
That's my
Hema,
if I may share something, what you
yes,
said,
Hema ji.
Adar,
Yeah.
about going to the temple and then you don't know why you cried. I think that can happen to anybody in any place of religion, or at a time when you as an individual have reached that stage, and you will just, I mean, the same lesson, say you're listening to a satsang or a sermon, or you've been to the church or whatever, and you're listening to whoever is the preacher, but it may not touch you at all. But 15 days later or a year or two later, you would have prepared yourself at some point of time because of instances or whatever. And then at that time, you will actually feel what that person is saying, or, and that's when it will touch you, and that's when you will actually get that experience. And that's, I think, so you probably were ready at that time. So
Yes,
many satsang,
probably.
not felt a thing, and then suddenly sometime, I was ready for that particular lecture or something, and it just hit me somewhere. And so I think
Very
it's all
true.
individual, basically.
I feel,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and just
Yes.
to add what Hema said, I feel that that's what Tamanna is trying to do, right?
Yes. Yes.
Create that environment for people to realize that they're all one. So
Yeah.
Yes.
hats off to you, Tamanna.
Yes.
And I think she had her hands up, so
Yes. Tamanna can share.
Yeah,
Ashwini.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
all the
Ashwini.
comments, everyone. And yeah, Ashwini, I'll just quickly carry on from where you left, like creating that environment where you realize you're one. I think historically, women have been the perpetrators of the very patriarchy they were victims of once. So that's where the whole mother-in-law conversation also came in. I just wanted to drop in that comment, which is things are changing, but it's not completely, the change is not complete yet. And that really surprises me. And this whole being the victims once and then perpetrating that same violence you experienced once, that's very surprising to me. But it's very common in all kinds of conflicts we see today, including the Israel-Palestine one. Like, for the Palestinians, the Israelis are the perpetrators of violence, but for the Israelis, they're the victims of Palestinian violence, and vice versa. So like there's this endless cycle. It's extremely heartbreaking. And talking of creating that community, where I think from a feminist perspective, why this feminist movement in terms of peace is very important is because if we see the kind of political peace that happens between nations or between leaders, it starts from a position of difference, not commonality. You start by saying, I'm different because I'm different, you're different, and we're compromising for a common peace in the middle. And it's all about I'm compromising for the enemy so that we can have a peace signed on paper. But when you come to the feminist movement that we're engaging in over here, it's about finding the commonality. We're both mothers, we're both sisters, we're both daughters of people who fought, people who've died, people who've been affected by violence. The generations that we give birth to are affected by this endless scale of violence. So we as mothers and sisters, like, they explore this common sisterhood. And that way, I think it helps in two ways. It's respecting the other woman, and it's also bringing in peace in a conflict that is not just feminism has nothing to do with this conflict, and women are the ones who participate the least in flaring the conflict, but still they're the part of the solution, which I think is beautiful. And secondly, I just wanted to touch up upon certain statistics, how women engaging in the kind of peace that's necessary, like over on the globe, like UN Women has taken out statistics that peace is not sustainable. That's again positive peace. It's not sustainable until you address the structural inequalities. So
Right.
women also might wage peace and get an agreement signed on paper, but unless you connect on that level of human to human, like sisterhood, motherhood, the peace is not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be long lasting. So I think feminism has its own problems, as it has its own wars to wage. But when feminism steps into waging peace between nations, I think it has a huge advantage, because it starts from a point of commonality and not a point of enmity with the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderfully said. I think you can continue to talk about the solutions and probably also the way ahead, concrete steps if you can think of any. So because time is running out, and at the same time, I don't want to miss out on everybody's perspective. You can continue and then we can take on the others. Yes.
So quickly, just to wrap it up, I think track 2 is the way forward. Like everywhere where there's like interstate conflict, that's what I'll stick to, because it's so wide defining conflict. So in interstate conflict, I think track 2 is the most important. And we've all agreed that human hate, which exists in our minds or hearts, and which is often manipulated by political establishments, is the cause for conflict. So if human to human, person to person, community to community, we realize that the other is not an enemy. It's politics, it's the conflict, it's the guns which are the enemy, then we can move forward. And I think, having said that, when track 2 initiatives, NGOs, civil societies are waging peace, I think it's something they cannot do in a bubble, they cannot do in a vacuum. The political establishment, which is the transfer of track 2, needs to take place. So Women Wage Peace has members in the Knesset who push for certain bills. For example, the latest bill they've pushed for is Political Alternatives First, which talks about every time there's a flare-up, we often tend to retaliate militarily. This state threatened us, we will retaliate, even if there's a threat of peace. I mean, threat of violence, not an actual act of violence. Just the threat, we respond with a retaliation, either verbal threat or military violent threat, because we want to show the other state we're ready for violence. We can protect ourselves because of that fear that we spoke about. So Women Wage Peace said every time there's a little threat of violence or a little skirmish happening, instead of retaliating militarily, where we lose lives, where we lose sons and fathers and our soldiers, we and our daughters even in Israel. So they asked that we want our leaders to come and talk on the table for a little bit, like brainstorm political alternatives to violence. And that's one way we've been waging peace. So I think involving the governance, the policy making, decision makers in the track 2 initiatives that are happening across the world is the first step. And the second step is continuing groundwork, that is having people leading the media, controlling the media, the social media, which dehumanizes and flares up conflicts in today's world. We see the way conflicts are exaggerated in media these days. When I was over here during the war, I could see both sides, my Israeli friends and their media. Anti-Semitic, terrorists, Hamas is this, Palestinians have no relation to Hamas, but they're still terrorized. They're still dehumanized as terrorists. Similarly, for Palestinians, they're occupiers, they kill our sons. And this leads to human hatred, which is not very easy to solve. If it's a conflict about land, you divide the land, it's solved. But if it's a conflict about hating the other, it lives within you, and there's no rational solution to it. And that's why I think this is where the media, where communities play a huge role, individuals play a huge role, the way we teach our kids, the biases that play out in our history. So I think it's a responsibility of every little, it's a whole ecosystem, peace and violence, they're both systems. And every single individual, organization, government, everyone has a role to play.
Communities, yes.
And it should be all encompassing. Yeah, that's
wonderful. So individuals, societies, communities, professional bodies, every unit, whether it is organizations, governments, they all have to work towards peace. It is one
from a single mother to the prime minister. I think everyone has a little role.
Everyone has to. They have to be committed to this. Very important. Yes, beautifully said. Actually, Mandar began, started the ball rolling, because when he talked about how it is important to embrace different cultures and what is the best in the different cultures, and because ultimately we are looking for something useful, something helpful, something that will elevate humanity and everybody. It is going to benefit everybody. It is not for me or for you. So very beautifully said. Both of you have covered very well. I would request Praveenji, would you like to say something? Way forward.
Thank you very much. I think there should be encouragement to, number one, voice the concern loudly so that everyone can be aware about the reasons for conflict. In
Very
other
true.
words, the political system must be democratic and encourage free voicing of individuals' views. Secondly, there should be freedom to adopt alternative options after regular intervals, maybe through elections. Thirdly, there should be separation of powers among the executive, legislative, judicial, so that there is a scope to
Very
have
well
checks
said.
and balances.
Balances. Very well
The
said.
system must be fully accountable to the people. There should be a robust legal machinery to effectively prevent corruption. All elements of good governance need to be implemented. There is a need to have sharing of power among different communities so that none feels alienated. The external powers at the same time must refrain from interfering in the internal situations of other countries. The freedom available to the people must be used responsibly. Use of social media for hate speech leading to conflict is on the rise. Efforts to interfere in the affairs of other countries through technology, such as social media, has also given rise to conflicts. And in view of this, what I feel is that the actions which need to be taken, I would sum up by saying that at the individual level, the loneliness is a dangerous thing. There needs to be more interaction with the community. At the community level, I would say the occasions should be articulated to bring together warring groups through events such as get-togethers, games, social events, to enable the people to express themselves and listen to the views of other persons. Having schools consisting of children from different religions together without any distinction is an important step. The communities should form alternate dispute resolution bodies and sort out individual, family, and minor conflicts. We know the Indian system of Gram Panchayat. It was very vibrant body to resolve the disputes. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
At
Yes.
the professional bodies, I would say there should be conscious efforts to reduce the differences among different groups. Isolating persons spreading differences need to be dealt with sternly. At the organizational level, people who spread harmony need to be encouraged by giving them platform to air their views. Organizations must support victims and complainants to stand against the aggressors. The support should be moral, physical, as well as legal till the battle is won. Finally, at the government level, there must be respect for legally formed other governments and no interference in their internal affairs. There is a need to have minimum understanding of the basic values, if not homogeneity in ideas. Governments should involve maximum people in day-to-day resolution of conflicting situations. Countries in developed world having companies that run social media must ensure implementation of the same rules for these countries when they operate in other parts of the world. Governments and companies supported from these governments in developed countries must refrain from promoting corrupt practices while operating in less developed or developing countries.
Wow.
Finally, about the collaborations, I would say as many groups within the country and outside having similar feelings or views need to come together and work for development of common people that can reduce the sharpness of the conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been all encompassing. You said something very beautiful. In fact, the whole thing is something that we need to look into and study it and see how it can be incorporated in everyday life. The most important thing that you said is, yes, one needs to have the freedom to express their concerns. So very often children say, at least let me say, you may not do it, but at least let me say. So we want to be heard, we want to express. That itself reduces of the pain. But when we express it again and again and repeatedly, if it is not listened to and then not, action is not taken, then we say, what about me saying it so many times? Why no action is taken? So we want action too, and it should not be delayed. So justice delayed is justice denied. There is so much of unfairness, inequalities that are there in every part of the world, and then we feel that some action should be taken. And political interference, like you said, with the judiciary, with the execution, can be a huge issue. So all these need to be addressed. Yes, Mandar, you want to say something?
Just wanted to say the role of business we are ignoring. There is a cost to violence. Every conflict that I have tried to look into, there is a huge cost to violence. Israel, Palestine for sure, inner city America for sure, and that we can counter it by promoting the business for peace. So that could be a game changer, right? So if we can create a revenue model for promoting peace,
okay,
it
I
can
think
counter
we need to understand how we can create that. We need to look into that. We have to have a complete study separately about this. Definitely, I will. We need to meet and discuss what we can do. Probably we can write a white paper. We need to meet the authorities and see what can be done. Rebecca, your call here.
Yes, thank you,
Mandar.
everyone. Just a couple of comments. I think that in terms of solutions, I think that like everyone has said, building community, both local and global, and then creating the shared vision. I know that Tamana has said that multiple times, but I really think that like creating the shared vision and emphasizing the commonality. And then
Absolutely.
2 additional items that I wanted to mention that people can just think about. You know, we're more polarized in the United States now than any time since our Civil War. And I think that when we talk about polarization, we need to think about it in 2 ways. One way to think about it is that polarization or differences in society are actually healthy. Because I know it sounds counterintuitive, but divisions show what needs to be worked on. Yeah. So when we look at the Black Lives Matter issue in the United States, this is coming to the surface, an issue that needs to be worked on. So we can look at polarization or difference as good and look at it as an opportunity to work through problems. The danger comes when it moves into something that we call toxic polarization, when we start to dehumanize others, when we start to look at them as different and subhuman, which happens in Israel, Palestine, and to be honest, what is happening now in the United States. So we need to pull back, acknowledge what is rising to the surface as something that needs to be addressed, but how do we look at each other as human beings in the process? And then the last one that I want to talk about is really changing the narrative of peace globally. And now is the time to do that. I think within Rotary, I can speak, we think about peace as something out there, something that is only worked on by governments, but peace is something we all need to work on and we all need to be invested in, and we can all look at the ways that we can change that within our own communities. So those are my closing thoughts. It was just such a pleasure to be on this panel. I truly appreciate the conversation about the personal and bringing the Indian philosophy into it. I agree with Mandar 1,000%. That needs to be exported all over the globe. You have a beautiful wisdom tradition in India. I'm very serious. A beautiful wisdom tradition in India that is now being backed up by science. All the science coming out now is breathing techniques. So that is something that we can all use. So thank you again. It was really wonderful.
Wonderful. Actually, we also need to discuss what collaborations are possible. If any collaborations are possible, that also can be broadened. We can discuss that also. So now, while you think about it, probably I will go to Colonel Rohit. Yes.
Right. So I don't know, Giricha, because we are at 35 and Karen said nothing goes beyond 10 minutes. So let me be very cryptic here. We can take it on some other platform later, probably. My personal understanding is just 4 words, and I just made it up right now. So I'll just, say. So the first word is educate. And education is in all spheres, whether we educate people, masses, governments, citizens, world bodies, WHO, UN, anything. So that education is very important. The second quotient is empowerment. So empower. And in empowering, you have to keep the quotient of empathy in mind when you empower people, whether you empower the women for their rights, whether you empower some society, some being, some organization, some body, some agency, some NGO. It all goes into those dimensions to curb the facet of violence. The third is enable. And when you talk about enable, you have to use the enabling tools today. And the most prominent tool there besides education is the media. So the right face, the right context, and I'm so glad that Rebecca, brought out that issue of how the toxicity is coming into the narrative, and it's very, very important. And you imagine you are talking of none other than a developed country called the United States of America, which is the global power on earth. And imagine just two things changed their election, mandate or history was BLM, Black Lives Matter, and the inability to contain the pandemic that time. And you see where you are today. Right? So while the BLM question is down a little bit, but the pandemic is much more, impactful. So that is how narratives can be driven to the other side, and that's the problem. And the fourth word which I have in the E column is exist together, and that is very important. Unless, and I've been ad nauseum talking about this from the geopolitical to the individual level, unless that existence peacefully together is not conceivable, not chartered as a course, not mandated as a course by all governing agencies, it will be difficult to, sporadically shun violence. And let me tell you, it's always a sort of a cat and mouse game. While peace paradigms, peace treaties, peace everything is very broad based, the occurrence of violence is a very small, input which is required or impetus required to generate that violence. It's something like, when we talk about terrorist attacks, it can happen in any shape, anywhere, anywhere. It's just the quantum and the resources required, right? So that is the gamut you're fighting with. And I think it's not a fight. It's more about how to homogenize our thought process collectively as global, beings. If we can do that slowly and gradually, maybe not our generation, maybe the future generations will bear the fruits, but the seed has to be sown very empathetically. And I'm happy that, each one of us here, we crossed our boundaries in terms of not going to the other country, but we talked about our own country. And I sincerely appreciate what Rebecca just spoke, because what she spoke is something that toxicity can be enlarged in scope and dimension into any sphere in the world. It is such a fragile, ecosystem today in terms of intellect thinking and the emotional quotient. Like I say, it's very easy to get something done of that nature. So, and last but not the least, I'm so happy that Tamanna, you shared that blog. So I will read through it. And I just opened that site and I saw you are in Tel Aviv, pursuing your education. So kudos to you to be here, and glad that you are pursuing that and closely monitoring this conflict zone, because that conflict zone divides a lot of world around it, divides a lot of political powers, economic powers around it. And if you get a good hang of it, maybe on a good seminar some one day, you, me, Rebecca can talk a lot of geopolitics there as well.
Absolutely. Very well said, captured. Ashwini, you have something to say? Dr. Balanandar says, time well spent, very beautiful discussions. I see comments, great views by panelists. And I also read that, yes, role of business communities in this peace building is critical, like when he had pointed out, Mandar had pointed out, so Vijay Shri has commented it. Ashwini, you want to say something? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, no. So in the whole realm of
Ashwini's baby is here.
Yeah,
lovely.
So in the realm of everything that we spoke about, a lot of this, the word ecosystem came about, right? And that is what we're trying to build here in the Rise World Summit.
Yes.
The whole idea of bringing people together is not just to bring people together and forget about it, right? So we are creating this platform for people to come talk and then say what next, how do we take it forward. And Girija, like you said, we have to talk about is collaborations and what next, right? Once we do that, we are looking at making this platform year long, or at least, we are trying to pitch for something like this to be this whole platform where we can get a lot of people together to be
Wonderful.
sustainable and long term. So any
Yes.
help that Rotary
Yeah.
can extend to us, right, in
Yes.
terms of keeping this whole, we have already built a community here in this Rise Pico World community, right? So
Yes.
any help that we could get from Rotary to keep this whole community alive and have
Conversation
conversations like this,
going. Yeah.
and have many more smaller summits in this whole platform, it would be, time well spent creating it.
Absolutely. Very well said. Absolutely true. True. Yes, definitely. Rotary is always open to dialogue, negotiations, peace building. That they have been doing it all over. Young students are brought, sent to different war zones, different disaster areas, and then they learn about peace, learn about poverty, learn about inequalities, and how they come out with very beautiful solutions. They go to a war place, they find out that widows are kept separately, they come back setting up their business. That is how we find that peace building groups who have gone from Rotary, they come back with solutions. So that has been a beautiful experience for us. Definitely we can do that. I will be very happy to do that. Yes, Rebecca, you would like to say something on it? She's asking for collaboration with Rotary.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this is one of Rotary's areas of focus, so we're always interested to see what types of collaboration are available. I was thinking that I could put together an email and send it out, just looking at resources and different ways that we work in peace. So that might be a starting point.
That will be a starting point.
Yes.
Very, very eager to work with you on that. Whatever we all can do as individuals, as organizations, as professional people, we need to do that. Whatever, Rotary is also about vocational service. So whatever professional expertise you have, if you can bring it to these peacekeeping efforts, peace building efforts, that will be great. So probably somebody would talk about how climate, how using natural resources unfairly could cause imbalance in the world. So probably Colonel Dave would be able to talk about it, and building communities on the basis of peace, and how to make peace something profitable. Yes, we have got Mandar, and that is going to be something new. I will be his first student. And then definitely, of course, talking about leadership and communication, I would like to come in wherever I can. And Praviji is there, and he has worked extensively in mobilizing people, getting people along, and doing a lot of service to community, using technology, bringing people. He has done it on the ground. And we have here Dr. Balinamdar, who has been working with children and health in a huge way. And yes, health disparities. 2 days back, yesterday we had a discussion. So a lady from Malaysia, she was talking about an expert. She said non-Malaysian children, when they are there in Malaysia and they have to face 10 times the expenditure of pediatric surgery, they are not able to afford it. So I was so heartbroken. I said, in such a good country, a country which is doing well, also if that is the situation, then how do you expect African countries or Nigerian countries or people from Syria or from Iran to do anything? Right? Because they're all war-torn nations. So it is really a world where mine and yours. So my citizens, I will do. And if you are from some other place and you have not yet become my citizen, I cannot spend for you. So it is tough breaking all these barriers. Dr. Bal, would you like to say something?
Oh, not really. I think it was a fabulous discussion which has gone ahead. Since I am a past governor, so obviously I have to bring Rotary inside. So let me bring Rotary inside in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
In our culture, Girija, we say Om Shanti Shanti.
Yes.
Now, Shanti word is not used in the same manner in all three times. It's not to emphasize peace. Shanti is peace for Rebecca. So what it means that it is Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So the decibel levels are different for each word. So the first one, Shanti, is a loud decibel. So that means for the world, the peace be onto the world. Then second is a slightly smaller, that is peace be in the community. And the third one is a very soft one that is only meant for you, the personal. So in all three levels, if we have to work for peace, I think it's nothing like that. And believe me, Rotary has done that. So for the world, some of you may be knowing that United Nations was born because of Rotary's efforts. Rotary Club of London in 1942,
1914.
they
Yeah.
started.
Yes. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
1943, and then UNESCO
1914
was
or
born.
peace started. Peace initiative started in Rotary. But yes, like you
Right.
said, Rotary
So
was huge.
UNESCO was born in 1947, thanks to Rotary's effort. A number of Rotarians were part of that. We also we have sent some. So you mentioned about 1,500 peace scholars who have gone to different
Absolutely.
countries, and they are using that. Then for the communities, Rotary is always there, because peace is not something which is always a conflict, but it is a happiness which we bring by our service above self. Peace through service was one of the themes, if you remember. So we work in communities. That is the second Shanti, and the third with our own value system that we have.
Yes.
If every one of us has our value system, then I'm sure peace will always prevail. There's no reason why peace will not be jeopardized. So that I only wanted to say, I think it was a fabulous. I was sitting here spellbound, listening to all the views. You asked me in between to talk, but I didn't want to talk because everyone was in a full flow, and they came out with such wonderful views. And I'm very thankful. I wrote time well spent, really time well spent. So I had to go and see a patient, but still I said, let me wait some time and then I'll go. So thank you so much for such a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We value your opinion, and yes, welcome for your suggestions too. Thank you so much. So this has been a very beautiful discussion. A flow came in because of all your experience, Aradha. And I'm very sure that when the intent is there, like he said, when he was talking about the decibels, I just remembered asking my mother, generally when you sing a song, you raise, it goes to a crescendo at the end. But why is it like when we say Om Shanti, it is becoming smaller? We say like this, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That's how we say. So I asked my mother, why is it going the reverse way? So she said like this. She said, unless people around you are happy, you cannot be happy. So the world has to be happy. If somebody next door is crying all the time, then you can't enjoy, you can't be having your meal because you'll be wondering what is happening there. So that is why it has to happen from outside. We think, peace inside happens also when people outside are happy. You can't keep the neighbors unhappy and you be happy. It's simply not possible. So very beautifully said. So shall we close the session unless any of the subject experts would like to put in something, say something? You're welcome to give any comment. Would you like to? Shall we close the session with my closing remark? Thank you very much, my dear friends. It has been a beautiful, and I think I'm going to cherish this moment forever. And I'm very thankful to Rise Infinity and IDERO Solutions for putting up this Rise Summit, which has been a beautiful experience. This is the 9th year. For 7 years, they have done it directly on one-on-one on the online, not online platform. It has been physical. But then when COVID struck, they immediately transformed to the online community, but I feel as though they have been doing it forever. It has been so very seamless. The team is so very wonderful to work with and very inspiring. You feel like doing more and more without their asking. You want to put in, and there is always appreciation coming in. It is such a beautiful learning working with your team. I'm very happy about it. So I think if we can generate this kind of ecosystem everywhere, the world is going to be beautiful. In families, if we can be so accepting, like that is what I see here, because I'm not somebody exceptional. Last year I came and I just was watching Rise Infinity. I was there in the summit, and after every show like this, I would leave my comments and I was participating, talking, and then they invited, Ashwini calls me up and says, would you like to be a core member? So I was really surprised. So if just being involved is, so this kind of inclusion, this is really a part of their value and it is there existing, and it is, they live by that. I could feel that. So thank you very much, Rise Infinity Foundation. So I would just like to close this with this. This is how, Praveenji started with it. He said, if absence of war is peace. Then I wondered, and then I said, if absence of tears is happiness, absence of noise is harmony, calmness, absence of Hyman rapturous concept. If absence of conflict is harmony, absence of protest is acceptance, absence of hatred is love, only then absence of war is peace. It's simply not possible. I just also remember a great poem written by Rabindranath Tagore in this context. And this was actually summed up by everybody, explained with relevance to the context. They brought in nations, they brought in organizations, they brought in their personal experience. But this was said by Rabindranath Tagore in his Gitanjali when before India became free. And I think that this applies to the whole world. We should pray that the world should get freed from the maladies and get into that world. He says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world is not broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. My Father, let this world awake. He said, my country, and I think we have to broaden it. So I would say, let this world awake. Let this world awake. Thank you so much. Thank you.